Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is episode 26 of the load balance playthrough, and today I'm going to tackle aluminum. Again, I have all the alternate recipes. I'm going to utilize the sloppy alumina, electrode aluminum scrap, pure aluminum ingot, and the heavy oil residue recipes. These are great alt recipes that give a better output of aluminum than the default, as well as cut out silica from the whole process. With the needs for the phase 4 space elevator parts, I'm about 2,000 aluminum ingots short from my other factory, so I'm going to use almost all the bauxite in the red jungle and red bamboo fields and turn it into 4,800 aluminum ingots. This amount will be more than enough for the playthrough. I'm going to be using this spot here and all these bauxite except for that impure node. Let me explain how this process works. So I'm going to take some water and bauxite, mix them together in 32 refineries instead of the listed 24, just so I can plug them straight up into the 32 refineries doing the electrode aluminum scrap. That step requires petroleum coke, so I'll be using 480 crude oil, turning that into heavy oil residue, turning all of the heavy oil residue into petroleum coke. With the 9600 aluminum scrap, I'll be using 160 smelters using the pure aluminum ingot to make the 4,800 aluminum ingots. Let me run through the blueprints I'll be using. To start things off, I'll be using 8 copies of this blueprint making heavy oil residue. I'll then use 8 copies of this blueprint to use up that heavy oil residue and turn it into the petroleum coke. I'm then going to use 16 copies of this blueprint to make my sloppy alumina. I know I covered this in the other aluminum video, but just to cover it again real quickly. The reason the pipe is angled like this is whenever you have a pipeline junction cross, if it's horizontal, they all kind of compete with each other. But when you have it vertical like this, it will prioritize any of the horizontal pipes over the vertical input. So, meaning this pipe is going to be coming from the next step. There we go. A little easier to see with both of them right next to each other. So the layout of these 2 blueprints is that you can just connect this pipe to this one, since these refineries are each outputting 105 water along with the aluminum scrap. We're going to send that back into this process, and it's going to get prioritized over the water coming from the water extractors. Having this design ensures that this refinery won't shut off because it's backed up with water, meaning that this one will be able to continue to flow. Because if that one shuts down, everything else in the factory will then shut down. So I know it looks silly, but I kind of like it. And then the last step is using this modified version of my 5 smelter blueprint. I just went ahead and loaded the recipe to each one so that I didn't have to go through and hit paste on 160 smelters. I went ahead and just ran a beam across the top so that I can have an easy place to do the wires, and it'll also make the blueprints all snap together really conveniently. I'll need 32 of this blueprint. I do already have more or less the footprint that I'm going to be using for, this is going to be for all of the factories. This right here is going to be our resource well pressurizer, bringing us our crude oil. I have a huge train station. One is my own, like I like to do, so that I have a way to just park my own train and not worry about it getting in the way. I'm going to have 2 for the exports. So these 2 are just going to deal with exporting ingots wherever they need to go. And then this last one is just a push-pull train to go over to there to grab the 3 farthest nodes. And I'm just going to bus the closest ones, like that one and the ones over there. So let me go ahead and get everything set up. I want to get this train running so that I can get the timing right and make sure the throughput is good, and build a couple more of the just the simple towers to get the miners in there. And I think I might add some walls so this isn't just a floating platform. So let me do that, and then we can start building some machines. I think it looks much better with walls. Floating platforms are great to start, but I just feel better about it being a little bit more supported. And we're going to use that area. But I wanted to take you over here real quick to show you what I got on this side. So we've got 2 pure and 1 normal node, all feeding into this train station. So it's real simple. if we go inside, each one is just split into 2 freight platforms. So the reason I did that is I just wanted to give myself a little bit more wiggle room. It's really hard to calculate the round trip and throughput and all those sorts of numbers, but I can give you the method I use to kind of give myself a rough estimate as to the max time that the train has. So just another quick math lesson with Moo here. And there she goes. So the amounts that I'm working with are 600 from the normal, and then the 2 pure nodes are clocked to 720 each. So since the pure nodes have the most, let's work with that because that's the one that's going to fill up the quickest. So each freight platform has 32 slots. So this is where the stack size of the item makes a difference. So ore stacks to 100. So we've got 3,200 in each freight platform. So I basically need this train to be able to complete 1 round trip before the freight platform gathers more than 3,200 ore, right? Because then if it takes longer than that, then I'm not going to be getting my 720 per minute on the train, right? So if we divide this by 720, that means it needs to complete a round trip in 4.44 minutes. And that's including the load and unload cycle, which I believe is around 15 seconds. So we're looking at travel time of, under 4 minutes for sure. You're probably wanting to get it much, under that. You don't want to cut it too close. I didn't think that would probably be an issue here, but since the train station was so big anyways, and I didn't see a reason in cutting it that close, I decided to just double it, because now if I divide that in half, so if we only do 360, now I have, 8 minutes to make my round trip, which obviously going from here to there, it's definitely not going to take that long. So what I did, if we jump in one so I can look at right here. So on the out, which is this station right here, I have it do the 1 load, unload, and it's complete. And then you can switch this between or, and if you click on it, you can switch it to and. So I have it and wait for 3 minutes. So since it has plenty of time, it just sits here, and now the train doesn't have to run as often, which obviously on a push-pull really doesn't mean anything because there's no traffic. But it does conserve the power a little bit. But this method is really great for using on your main train lines if you're not transporting a whole lot, and instead of having the train constantly running, you can have it run a little bit less often if it has a place to wait. So this only works because no other trains are trying to go here. And here we are at the main train station. Let me show you what it looks like underneath. So I made the inside big enough so that I could basically do 2 floors. So all of the inputs are going to be down here at the bottom, and then I'll probably use like glass floor or something over this top when I start needing to load the other train stations for the exports. And this is how we did the load balancing. It's actually pretty easy, even though it looks like a lot. So with both of the pure nodes on either end, it's real simple. We've got a Mark IV belt putting out 480, and then we're just splitting off a Mark II line. So that's 120, leaving us with 360. And then I just have the 360 line being split into 3, so that's 120, 120, 120. And the reason for that is since we have 2 360s, if I cycle out 120 total, that'll leave me with 600. And 600 is just the magic, really easy number to work with for all of these refineries since they intake 150. The normal node was pretty easy as well, so we just did the same thing. We cycled out a Mark II, but then an additional Mark I. So instead of 360, it goes down to 300. And then we're just doing a similar load balancing with the other pure nodes that are coming in. The other 2 pure nodes are going to be a full 780 belt. I needed 2 of the 4 pure nodes to be completely overclocked to 780, and the other 2 to 720 to give me my 4800, which just happens to be a really easy number to work with. So let me show you what it looks like on the other end. So these are just going to come across this little bridge. And then we've got this whole underside to do a little bit of logistics when we need to. So right now I'm just having them all sync so that I can make sure that the throughput is good and we are all set on that front. And now it's time to place all those machines. So I'm going to start with the heavy oil residue and then petroleum coke, and then we'll get to the rest of the aluminum. So these are going to get spaced out the same as the turbo fuel. Really should have used the patterns again. But each refinery is going to get its own, be centered on its own foundation. And now we can do the petroleum coke refineries. So I need a minimum of 2 foundations to do all of the belt work for the polymer resin, but I'm just going to give it 3 because I've got the space. I don't need to make it too cramped. And now I need 16 of this blueprint to do the sloppy alumina. So I'm going to give it a ton of space right here because you will see in just a minute when I get to those machines. But you just kind of want to center it on basically its own little 4 foundation block. And to make sure they're all lined up, we're just going to nudge them all into place. Now for the refineries doing the electrode scrap. So with this, I need to give enough space to do all the load balancing for the petroleum coke that's going to need to feed into all of these. So make sure it is lined up, and I think, yep, perfect. So we're just going to make sure that electrical pole is right in the middle. And now it's time for the smelters. So since I need 160 in total, that's 32 sets of this 5 blueprint. And just because they snap easy doesn't mean I'm not going to snap them right on top of each other. And there we go. Sure beats trying to manually place 160 smelters and all of their connections. As I was getting ready to move on to building the next thing, I realized my spacing was off and I didn't have enough. So the very last row was correct, and that was about it. I needed to move all 3 of these rows this direction by 1 foundation. So that's done. Thankfully, it's all blueprints, so you can delete them and replace them all as one, and man, it would have been a nightmare before update 8. Let's just say that. So the next step is bringing in the water. So to do that, I could go and place just the water extractors. I need a total of 1440 water. Obviously, it needs more, but a bunch of that is coming from the recycled bit. So just from water extractors, I need 1440 per minute. So I could just combine it into 3 pipes and then split it up across all these machines. I just really don't like doing that. So I'd rather keep each of these systems as small as possible, so what I'm going to do is use packagers. It also avoids me having to use any lifts since this is not at the same level as the water. And it has the added benefit of justifying my 120 empty canister per minute factory. Which reminds me, I probably need a few thousand empty canisters. Perfect. That'll just take a couple trips. With all of the packagers placed to unpackage the water, now we just need to do the other end of the process. So for that, we're going to use this lake and another lake on the other side that I'll get to after this one. So let's start with getting our water extractors placed. So for this, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and feel free to tell me in the comments if there's an easier way to do this. But so what I want is I want a gap of exactly 4 meters, and the reason for that is at 4 meters I can place this exactly on the edge, and it's going to make about as close to the right angles as we can make. So I've got that, and then I just want to find the spot where it's not overlapping so that it's about exactly 4 meters. Now the reason I'm doing this is normally I would place the foundations underneath and then let the water extractor snap to that, but unfortunately I don't think this pool is deep enough in any of the spots to let me snap it underneath. So that's why I did that, so that way when we grab the pipe we can go horizontal to vertical, and that's about as close as you can get it. I think any smaller gap and it's not going to work. But once you do it once, now I can just snap these to one another and it's all done. So I don't mind. So there's half of the water extractors. I'm just going to use this simple 2-packager blueprint. I can line this up, give myself 2 foundations to do the belt work here, and we should be good. So another advantage to doing this is instead of needing 3 pipes, I only need 2 belts. Each half of the water will hold 720 package water. And if we just come to the other side of the factory, we can see another little platform. So I'm just going to do the same exact setup right here. And that's pretty much all the machines placed. So now it's just connecting everything up. All right, well, let's start with the beginning. And I've already got the resource well pressurizer. I had to power it on just so I could place all of these, and then I just powered it off so that it'll all come to life with everything else, and I just drain the pipes. But because this gap was tall enough, I need a pump, just a Mark 1 on each of the pipes to get the head lift. I definitely could have combined all of the pipes down here and cut out the need for most of these pumps, but I don't really mind. They don't cost too much power. All of the pipes are just being brought up here and then merged together, just making a short trip over here. So let's start here. And there we go, nice and easy. So for the outputs, we're just going to change the color, and it's a nice straight shot for these. I need to sink this polymer resin, so I'm going to place some temporary foundations just to make placing these mergers easier. With each refinery outputting 20 polymer resin. That's 40 coming out of the first mergers, so we can go ahead and just use Mark 1. From here we have 80, so we need Mark 2. Out of here is 160, so Mark 3. And we have 316 total coming out. Of course. And we've got 360 coming out of here. So we just need one Mark IV belt. And I'll just place a sink here. And now with the handy filter tool, since I used a different material, I can just swing this around and delete all of these temporary foundations real easy. Moving on to the petroleum coke. Already have the input done. The output is 120. Now, the machines that require the petroleum coke as an input, those require it at a rate of 60 per minute. So the easiest number to work with here is going to be grouping these up in 4 refinery groups. So there's 480 on each of these. So I'm going to have 4 480 lines. So 240 coming out of these mergers. Then we're just going to bring these to right here for now. Okay, so that's the petroleum coke up to there. But let's do some of this other work first. So those are actually going to go up and over some of this. I think one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to move these power poles. I think I'm just going to have them hang off the side. So I'll come up with something to place them on. Just right there. But I think I want to use that space. Okay, so let's do the load balancing for all of these packagers. Alright, let's set the recipes. So, since we're going to unpackage water, and packaging and unpackaging are actually 2 different rates. That's why this works out so well. These are actually going to be underclocked to 90 each, because these need 150 water, but we are going to get 105 from the last step once it's completely up and running, leaving us the deficit of 45 per pair of these systems, right? So these 2 need 45 each, so I need to plug in 90 water. So these are each going to be underclocked to 90. So since now we know each one is doing 90, that's a Mark II out of all of these, and I definitely need more reinforced iron plates. Two 90 builds, that means this one's 180, so Mark III. Out of here we've got 360, so Mark IV. And there's all the belt work for the packagers, but I'm actually going to change the very end and beginning process here. I'm going to flip this around. So the splitter, we're going to have this facing in. Let's see, where is it? Same with this merger. And then I'm just going to bring both of them up, or back down, right here. So this is where we need a Mark V. It's going to be 720 in, 720 empty packages out. And then I'm just going to use the space underneath and that's how we're going to bring in and out the packaged water empty canisters. It'll make things a little bit easier and tidier, especially since half of it's going from over there, half of it's over here. Alright, so let's do these refineries. Okay, moving on to the water for this. So these are going to unpackage the water, and to get them into these machines, what I'm going to do is you need a gap of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that will make a nice little right angle. So let me place these down, and we'll move on from there. And that's all the water being fed into these. So that's one input done. So for the other one, we need 150 bauxite. These machines are underclocked to 75% because I want them to output the exact same amount that these need, making everything real easy. So when we get to this, I can just do the same thing where it's just one straight pipe, making everything really simple, giving me less headaches in the future, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to group up a total of 4 refineries together, and that will need a total of 600. And that's why I was load balancing the belts into 600 lines. And since I only need to place this one splitter for every 4, I'm just not using the temporary foundations. Since each of those lines are going to have 150, that means I need 300 on this one, so that's a Mark 4. And there we go, we just need 8 600 belts to plug into all of these, and we're all set. So instead of running all 8 belts along here like I normally would, I am actually going to use that huge amount of space underneath, and I am going to bring up all of the belts like that. So surprisingly enough, this is probably going to be one of the cleaner looking factories because I'm going to use the underfloor logistics just for a couple of things. And that's how we're going to get all of the bauxite into this first row of refineries. So now let's do a little bit of pipe work. So let's connect all of the water pipes, and then I will connect the 2 machines to do the alumina solution. Alright, let's change the color to white and do the second set of pipes. Alright, beautiful pattern. So now these machines are all done. So the other input, we've got the alumina solution, petroleum coke. So now I just need to get that petroleum coke plugged into these machines. I'm just going to go ahead and use my temporary foundations again. So these machines intake 60 petroleum coke, and I've got 480 lines. So I just need to group up 8 machines and plug up one of those belts to each one. Okay, so we know we're plugging the 480 lines into there, but we're just going to work our way backwards. So 60 and 60, so that means these first ones are going to be 120 belts. So let's place all these. So we need 120 and 120, so 240 is a Mark 3. 240 and 240 is our 480, so this is where the 480 lines get plugged in. So we're just going to run these two right there for now. And now I just need to connect point A to point B. So to do that, we're just going to run them over here. Not too bad. So now I just need to delete this temporary foundation. Yeah, good old filter tool. And that's all the petroleum coke belted up and free from all of the temporary foundations. So if you're wondering why I belted this up and over everything and I ran the bauxite underneath and kept it a little bit cleaner, is these are completely full Mark IV belts. So it's nice and easy to tell if anything's wrong if there's ever any gaps on here. Whereas it's a little bit harder to tell when there's only 600 on the 780 belt, since there's going to be a good amount of gaps on that. And I just think this looks cool. So for the last part, I probably should have just made a second blueprint, because now I'm just going to end up deleting this whole little section, and I could have saved myself a little bit of time by having a separate blueprint. I just decided not to. So hold for a second and I'm going to get rid of this. Alright, with those out of the way, the reason for it is each one of these is going to be outputting 300 aluminum scrap. Since each smelter inputs 60, that means a set of 5 equals 1 refinery. So instead of pairing them together and then splitting them up, I'm just going to connect each refinery with a block of 5 smelters. So we need Mark IV belts. So let's do the easy half. And I should mention, I did change the belt speeds for everything for this blueprint, specifically for this one, since normally I use a 5 smelter blueprint that doesn't have the recipe set, and then I have to manually change which belts depending on what recipes and whatnot. This one, I changed everything ahead of time, saving me quite a bit of time with how many I had to place. So that connects this whole row. And now to pair up the second refinery with the second row. So to do that, we are going to use that underfloor logistics area, because that'll just make things a lot cleaner. And just like the others, I need Mark IV. And for the last bit of belt work, let's take a look at the machines. So these are going to output at 30 each, so each block of 5 is going to be outputting 150. So if I group up 4 groups, that'll be a line of 600, which is just an easy number to work with in the future for when I need to load balance and send that out to whatever factories need them. So that's what we're going to do. So 150 coming out of here, so we just need Mark III for all of these. And to finish this off, we just need one Mark IV belt connecting 2 of the mergers together. So that's going to feed 300 into this 300, giving us that 600 belt. So the original plan was to run all the aluminum ingots over here and then across this little glass foundation bridge, and then I was just going to drop them down into that middle section. But after doing all of this, what I think I'm going to do is just have the ingots drop down, and then I'm going to have them run just right underneath the trains instead of right over. So let me get some lifts in place. So these are all outputting 600. So Mark 5. That's basically the process. So I still have a few more things to do. I need to place all of these machines, and I need to do the belt work underneath and connect all of these things together so that they're all on the same power grid. So let me finish that up real quick and I'll show you what I did. And we're back. So first thing is I went ahead and fixed that belt bus. So now it's running underneath the train tracks instead of over top. The next thing I went ahead and changed was I added this extra piece for the power towers to kind of get them out of the way. And then I also added a hyper tube that ran across to bring me from the train station over to here, which I thought was kind of fun. We've also got a priority power switch for the factory. I went ahead and disconnected the petroleum coke because what I want to do is let the system run, and I'm going to have a lot of the fluids back up a bit, especially the alumina solution. And then I'll go ahead and connect this to get everything up and running completely. The next thing I did was add these little huts on either side just to give myself an easy access down below. So we still have plenty of open space, but we are using quite a bit of it over here. So there is some clipping, but this is all temporary, so all of these yellow ones are going to get deleted. So once I delete those, I've got everything set up so I can just connect each of these to the right belt. So these are going to feed all of our bauxite to the correct set of refineries. So we've just got these bussed over here. I do hate this, and I'm hoping that in the future Coffee Stain lets us delete all of the foliage. So that's kind of what I'm banking on. I'm not a big fan of clipping through here, but I can blow up all of the other foliage. It feels like you should be able to delete these, so I am just banking on being able to do that in the future. So the last sets of refineries are being fed by this normal node, which is 600, so that just got to plug straight in. And then there's another normal node that's coming from over there that's coming and just plugging into the last set right there. This right here is the water. So the belt going up here has the packaged water, and then the belt going the opposite direction is going to carry the empty canisters out. And up on the ceiling, we did a little bit more of the belt work. So these ones right here are just taking... I can show you. So this is how we're taking the aluminum scrap from here to the smelter set that's on the opposite side. It's just running right along the ceiling and right into there. I'm also using the ceiling to bring the finished aluminum ingots over to the bus that's going to run them to the train station. So each one gets dropped down with the lift to this level. And then they head on to the train station. And this is what one of our bottled water sections looks like. So we just have the empty canisters coming along here and then being load balanced across all the machines. And the bottled water is then getting grouped up and being sent on into the factory. And this is what the other one looks like. So pretty much an identical setup. We're just bringing them in right here. And with everything in place, all I need to do is fill up the packagers with the empty canisters, and then we'll be able to turn this on. So let me go ahead and do that, and we can flip the switch. The factory is now loaded up with plenty of empty canisters, so I'm good to get this started. I am going to do this in 2 phases, like I mentioned. Once the heavy oil residue and the alumina solution back up, then I can connect these belts, letting the petroleum coke flow on to the final process, getting everything completed. Once I flip the switch, I'm going to go ahead and run downstairs. I'm going to delete those sinks and connect the belts to the right places. So let's go ahead and get this factory and that stopwatch started. And now that all of these refineries and all of these refineries are backed up, we can go ahead and connect this and watch it come to life. And just like that, we have aluminum ingots. So I now have 4,800 aluminum ingots being sent to Awesome Sinks, ready to be put on trains for these last factories. That is mission complete. I went ahead and let the factory run for a little while to make sure everything was fine and we get all of the machines up and running to 100%. So now if we take a look at our power grid, nice rock solid lines, like to see it. So we still have the same for consumption and max consumption and capacity and production, so everything is running at 100%. The other thing I did is take out some of the extra because I'd rather see gaps on the belts, especially down here, since there's only 600 but the belts were full and it could only take 600. They were kind of doing the stopping and starting thing, so I just pulled out a bit of the extra. I basically just went through each of the refinery and pulled out 100 and let the excess kind of load balance again, and it still has more than enough in each one. So with the 8 lines of 600 aluminum ingots being sent to the train station here, let me show you the inside. This is where all 8 lines come in, and each one has its own Awesome Sink. So I wanted to tuck them along the wall and keep it as out of the way as possible and give myself as much space as possible to do any of the load balancing so I can get them onto the trains to where they need to go. The next project will be back in the Dune Desert making heavy modular frames, fused modular frames, and pressure conversion cubes. Since that's a lot, let's just start with the 90 heavy modular frames. Look forward to that, and thanks for watching.